Hey everyone! So recently Guru Larry launched a video called Sony's Top 5 Marketing Fails. And if you remember, I also recently made a video focusing on why video game marketing was so bad, where I reviewed 5 marketing campaigns from a marketer's perspective and analyzed on whether they were good or bad. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take a look at Guru Larry's video and I'm gonna check if the campaigns he chose were actually good, bad, and give you some context from a marketer's perspective. So for those of you who don't know me, I have 8 years of marketing experience, 3 of which were in a video game company. I have worked for small companies and large companies on both a national level and international level. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take a look at the video and give you some context. Okay, I'm excited for this, let's go!
The PlayStation is cool. Well, at least that's the message Sony tried to get across to gamers in the late 90s and early 2000s. Their systems weren't your kid brother's Nintendo. They were the edgy, full-on mature system for the new millennium.
Yes, this part is actually true. It's kind of interesting to see how the age demographic of all gamers changed as the console generations progressed. Basically, with the Atari 2600, you would see a lot of ads aimed at very young children, we're talking like toddlers, but then when you move to the NES, it progressed a little to more like 12-year-olds, maybe 13 or 14, and then with the Sega Genesis, it was aiming at kids a little bit older than that, maybe 14 to 16, maybe even 18, but yes, it is interesting to see how the target demographic evolved as each console generation progressed.
However, as eager as Sony were to get this message across over the intervening years, their rather ham-fisted approach did come back to bite them in the arse on several occasions, often with hilarious, or even downright embarrassing consequences. So, this episode Hello you, I'm Guru Larry, and I welcome you to Fact Hunt.
So Guru Larry is mentioning all these marketing aberrations and publicity pratfalls, whatever, but a lot of these were probably done intentionally, but I'm pretty sure we'll get more into that as we watch the video.
Sony's top 5 disastrous marketing fails. But before the fun begins, don't forget to click that subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, to be first to see future Fact Hunt episodes. And away we go!
And you can do the same for me too, subscribe, bell, whatever, just saying.
In 1993, Sony purchased Psygnosis, the long-running Amiga developer, renowned for its fresh style and all its box art looking like mid-80s prog rock album covers. At their office on the Liverpool docks, they were forever coming up with cutting-edge titles, one of which was Wipeout, a racer set in 2052 in which players raced around an anti-gravity futuristic racing league. It was a sort of souped-up F-Zero, featuring excellent physics and graphics, and a brilliant launch title for the PlayStation in the West. Sony's marketing strategy in Europe at the time was heavily influenced by manager Jeff Glendenning. Glendenning's idea was that they should specifically market the PlayStation towards young adults, thinking that they'd have more disposable income than children, to whom games consoles had previously been targeted.
Yes, about this. Sony's target demographic with the PS1 was 19 years old. Now, I don't really know what their target demographic was in the UK, but it could be a little older, but generally 19 years old was the overall age rating group where they were aiming at.
They wanted to associate the PlayStation with what was cool with that demographic at the time, and identified the growing underground club scene, in part due to Glendenning's time with rave culture in the 80s. They contacted nightclubs and festival promoters directly, installing dedicated PlayStation areas in these venues, ending up with over 52 clubs in the UK alone that had a PlayStation room. This tactic surprisingly worked, and the
Nothing surprising about it. This is actually a pretty ingenious tactic. I wish I thought of this, because yes, if you're aiming for this demographic, going to nightclubs and putting your product on nightclubs is a good idea. And well, as Guru Larry said, it worked. The only difficult part about this tactic would be how to ensure your console would not be stolen. In fact, I'm going to assume several were stolen, but it's probably this was a sunk cost or they were already expecting this. What really matters though is that people were playing your game while having fun, while drinking, while going out, while partying. And yeah, if you're targeting that demographic, that's a great message to pass. It works really well. It's a nice synergy.
PlayStation was able to successfully embed itself into this youth culture. When Wipeout was being developed, it managed to sync almost perfectly with this approach. The game featured music by the Chemical Brothers, Left Field and Orbital, among others, which Psygnosis was able to do by leaning on Sony's musical division. Combine this with its slick style, icons and symbols developed by the stylish design studio Designers Republic, and Sony had on their hands a game which they could put just about anywhere. And
again, iconography, music, it all has a great synergy for nightclubs, so it's a pretty genius idea. I wish I thought of that. It's a really good idea.
It would look ace. However, there was, of course, one problem with this approach. Sony associating itself with the club scene was all well and good for people that went to clubs, but it caused the more conservative public to start associating Sony and the PlayStation with the more negative aspects of clubbing. Youth culture has never been liked by certain generations, and in this case, they thought that these clubs were full of people off their face on drugs and booze. Which of course, they were, but it wasn't the PlayStation's fault. So, the design studio which came up with a lot of the artwork for Wipeout, Designers Republic, came up with a new poster to help advertise the game. And this is that poster. Yeah, so what can we say about this? It features a young Sarah Cox and some other bloke slumped over and glassy-eyed, bloody-nosed and looking in no particular direction. According to Ian Anderson, one of the people that designed this poster, the main idea was to depict speed. However you want to interpret that. He said that they wanted to be edgy and push boundaries, provoke a response from people predisposed to be offended, and raise the profile of the game. And it did that. All of those things. The Sun newspaper hated the poster, stating that an ad for a Sony computer game aimed at kids as young as 3 had been blasted by glamorising drugs. Yes, they really said that. The part about the game being aimed at kids as young as 3 is because the age rating for the game was just that. And there was nothing controversial in the game itself. Almost as if they were stating that the game should be an 18 because of this poster. They even printed a quote by a politician who called it an outrage. The funny thing about this outrage is there was no real evidence that the poster was ever actually printed.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, so let's take this one step at a time. Creating a shock marketing tactic is something that not a lot of ad agencies like to do. Some do, but not a whole lot of them, for obvious reasons. And this is the sort of marketing tactic that's been falling out of fashion for a while now, thankfully too. But just look at this. See who they're targeting and see who is mad at it. They're targeting young kids, edgy kids, young adults, ravers, people who go to nightclubs, whatever. Now look at who's mad. Politicians, journalists, older people, professionals. In other words, not their target audience. And this is the basis of the shock marketing tactic. You're going to offend some people, they're going to start talking about it, and then the ones who are your target audience are going to hear about it, either through the news or because someone told them. And that's the basis of it all. The idea being, yeah, you're going to offend this group of people, but they're not your target audience, so they were never going to buy your product in the first place. What you really want is this group of people who are going to see how this group of people is mad and are going to think, okay, if they're mad, then this is probably a good thing. I want to get the console because they don't like it. So it's a very edgy teen thing to do. This is also why many people think that there is no bad publicity, but that is actually not true. There is bad publicity. Bad publicity is when you insult your target audience, because if you attack your target audience, they're not going to buy your product. But if you attack someone who is not your target audience, they're going to talk about it, they're going to be angry, and your target audience is going to hear about it.
poster form. It seemed to appear in a few gaming magazines, and that was about it. The outrage was practically made up, and it gave free publicity to an advertising campaign which most people would never have seen otherwise.
There you go, see? This is the true objective of every marketing campaign, to get publicity out of the offended party.
There were later revisions of the image which cleaned up some of the blood, because even the gaming press were put off by it. However, it had the intended effect. Wipeout was a hit, and Sony had established itself as a company willing to upset the status quo. Whilst the previous entry was an earnest attempt to be cool and edgy, this next one was just a bit of a dick move. In the mid-2000s, the idea of viral marketing was starting to embed itself in the consciousness of ad agencies everywhere. Instead of spending out a huge budget on a big campaign, instead they could just do something small, which, through the power of the internet, regular people would go on to share themselves, saving the company a load of money, and potentially being far more effective. Sony cottoned onto this and attempted to craft a PSP campaign with the intent purpose to become viral and spread the message.
Yeah, so when the whole internet revolution took over, basically the bloggers, the YouTubers, whatever, a lot of companies didn't really know how to capitalize this. It was new, there were no written rules, people didn't know what to do, but they did know that there was a lot of potential here. So there was a lot of experimentation here, a lot of cringe being thrown here, but also a lot of genius moves and tactics. So let's check out this one.
It became viral, alright, but not because it was good. Oh no, it was an absolute train wreck. In November 2006, a website popped up on the internet called All I Want for Christmas is a PSP.com.blog. It seemed to depict the quest of a young man called Charlie who wanted to help his buddy Jeremy get a...
Okay, so this is something I see a lot of people fall for. Whenever you see a small blog, very small news website, small YouTuber, small whatever, that suddenly is gaining a lot of traction, a lot of popularity from the media, the press, whatever, and it seems to be positive as a whole, chances are it's a marketing campaign. What really happened is, the company created this blog, then probably sent out press releases to the media, who then started creating articles on it, and then it just kind of started spreading. That's usually how these things go, and it's relatively easy to detect one of these campaigns when you have an eye for it. But generally the rule of thumb is, if a small blog or website or influencer or whatever suddenly has a lot of articles, but positive articles or articles like, hey, have you checked out this blogger or this person or whatever, chances are it's a marketing tactic and the press release was sent to the media.
PSP for Christmas. It was, however, the definition of cringeworthy, with everything written in how adults think kids talk over text.
Classic mistake.
Every blog post attempting to detail the PSP's selling points in an advertiser-friendly way, while still maintaining the facade of being a fan site. It would even say things like, consider us your own personal PSP hype machine, here to help you wage a holiday assault on your parents.
Okay, here's what I think it happened. More than likely, the ad agency actually created good articles, or good blog posts, but Sony most likely took a look at them and thought, yeah, this writing style is too edgy for us, or not advertiser friendly, we can't go with this. And this is something that happens a lot. A lot of times, good marketing ideas are either changed or altered or die, but more often than not, they are very altered because the person above you, the person ahead of you, your superior, isn't really getting the whole picture, or they don't know how kids think, or they thought something was a good idea until they actually saw it implemented, and then they start asking for changes. And then this happens, where you have a campaign or a marketing product which appeals to no one, because suddenly your text or your copyright, a text in a blog is called copyright, or a promotional text or a marketing text is called copyright in most circumstances. And so the ad agency had to change the copyright, had to adapt it, and it probably became this mess, which sadly is very common in marketing. When you have a great idea, then someone above you who is not in marketing suddenly starts getting cold feet They ask for changes, and what you get is a campaign that appeals to no one anymore.
You're spelt UR. Good old mid-2000s. As you can probably guess, it was rumbled pretty immediately. The funny thing about it was the website was actually registered to the large advertising agency Zippertony, who had been known to work with Sony. So it was pretty clear what was happening. Sony even tried to squirm out of the whole ordeal with a lame apology, stating they were trying to be too clever, and that they had been busted.
To be fair, I don't know if legally they could have registered the website under an anonymous name or anyone else's name. I don't know American law, I don't know UK law, I don't really know how that side works, but it is a possibility. Just putting it out there.
It was quietly removed and they attempted to hide it forever. Too red-faced to admit that it had actually been a real thing. What has gone down in the annals of internet history though, even more so than the attempt to fraudulently advertise a product, was the music videos. They decided to pitch these characters as something of hip-hop wannabes who are creating their own videos, leading to this absolute gem.
Yeah, another issue with being edgy is that edgy becomes cringy really easily, and that's what you have here. That's why appealing to edgy folk can be really difficult. Appealing to younger kids can be really difficult, especially if you're 30 or 40, because you still think you got it, but you really don't. Trust me, I don't got it anymore. So it can be quite difficult, yes.
The internet never forgets.
All I want for Christmas is my PSP.